Nice work, mate. Getting away from the doom scrolling for a bit. Coming to a series that's actually going to improve your chess. Apologies for the delay on this episode. This is my second time recording this because I didn't select the correct mic in my recording software the first time and I spoke to no one for 45 minutes. If you're interested, my video last week was a rant about concussions and how that affects me with bright lights and migraines and things like this. The inspiration behind the coffee table chess series that I'm also doing on the side. This is episode 12 where we covered the Laszlo Polgar Made in 2 book, the best 802 examples, 599. Your time starts now. You probably noticed the king's restricted. You might have tried these 2 bishop checks. Both of them fail. If you come up this way for the check, he's going to run this way, and vice versa. If you go here, he's going to run the other way, and you're not getting mate in 2. We need to pre-move the king's escape. We do this by playing g4. If the bishop takes, we plug the hole. The king can no longer escape this way. So then we can come up this way for the checkmate with the bishop in a double bishop mate theme. If the king takes, we've led him down into our checkmating net. So now we can follow up with the bishop in this crisscross balustra style checkmate. 600. I love these types of puzzles. The king is stuck here. We have so many pieces around, but it's not as easy as it looks to deliver the checkmate. We actually need to manufacture a pin here. So we need to get rid of one of these pawns. We also need to remove this knight to open up the scope of our rook. We can do this by playing knight to c4 here. The pawn must take. We've pinned this pawn. So we can follow up with the bishop check. So that's why we had to get rid of the knight. So now the bishop is defended when we give the checkmate here. And it's also taking away these squares. 601. What a beautiful sacrifice, this one. King's really restricted here. You just need to give a check. You can tell we have 1, 2, 3 guys on the square with 1 defender. We can't magically put a pawn there, so we've got to sacrifice our queen. Pawn takes. And then we take with either pawn, doesn't matter. Both will lead to checkmate. 602. We want to slide here and deliver a checkmate, but first we need to make sure the king can't escape. So we've got to create a wall of pawns here. What we can do is we can go bishop to b4. If the pawn takes, we've created this wall of pawns. We can slide in and deliver a ladder style checkmate here. However, the king can take, but we've led him into a checkmating net, and we can just slide up one little square with the queen. Or we could also play queen to the side here. The main reason is we're just on the dark squares here, so we can take away his retreat because he came from a dark square. 603. You can see that any check would be a checkmate. King has nowhere to go. So you might try this knight check here. The problem is that the bishop can take. However, if you look a little bit further, this is forcing, so the bishop has to take here. You've increased the scope of our X-ray attacker, which is defending the square, and you've opened up another check. So now the bishop can take before the king was able to take, because the bishop was here. Now it can't. Defended by the rook for checkmate there. 604. Just playing ring around a rosy here. We want to come in with the queen, force the king down, and then follow around. We're just chasing him around this center pawn here. Pawn defends us as checkmate, and the bishop's helping stop the king's retreat. 605. We use our double check tactic here. Double check with the rook and the bishop. That way we can be lazy and not calculate, because this means only the king can move, so we can ignore every other move on the chessboard. The only legal move here is for the king to take the bishop. Once the king takes, you'll spot our dovetail mate style checkmate, so we can slide the queen over and finish him off. 606. We need to reverse engineer this puzzle a little bit. We start off by trying like bishop check here. Problem is he escapes here. And you try bishop check here. Of course he's going to take it, and we're not getting a checkmate on the next turn. Let's say you come up with one of the moves here. This is actually what we call a cooked puzzle, meaning there's more than one correct answer. This is the move I found, because for me this was quite logical. The only way they can escape the checkmate from the bishop is the square. So ahead of time, I take it away by playing rook e2. So if they play any random move, we're going to play bishop here or bishop here for checkmate. However, I did say there was another answer. Incredibly, you can get away with knight to f4 here. You're threatening knight checkmate here while taking away the king's runaway square. If the king takes, then we can play our bishop up. We've led them into a checkmating net. That's checkmate there. If they do a random move, we're actually threatening knight to h5 checkmate here. So maybe they get smart and play something like g6. However, we're also threatening second checkmate. We can also jump down here to e2, and that's checkmate there as well. Guarding the runaway square, giving the checkmate. 607. Another case of reverse engineering the puzzle. You try a bunch of checks, but nothing seems to work. Like you play the knight here, for example, the king runs away this way. You play the rook check here. It seems really good, but the king runs away this way. And it doesn't matter where you move your rook. If you move it this way, king can escape that way, so it's not mate in two. And if you go back, well, they're just going to repeat, right? This helps you come up with a crazy idea. The move being rook to e5 here. The first thing to calculate is if they take it, what have you achieved? This actually helps you because you've led the king into a checkmating net where we can follow up with our knight here. Taking away the king's runaway square, you'll see this theme a lot during this series while giving the checkmate. bishops restricting. Perfect, so we know we can actually play our rook here. What else can they try? Well, instead of taking it, they can try and play the knight here, for example. What checkmate do we have in that position? We've got an upside down opera mate here. If they play their knight here, well, we still have the same opera mate, but we also have this checkmate here as well. 608. We've got another beauty here. You might try and do a clearance sacrifice at first. Put your knight here for check. So you might try something like playing a hook mate here. Problem being that if they take with the knight or the rook, let's say knight for example, and you give the check, they can run away here. That's the problem. Ahead of time we need to fix that. And we don't actually use that square for check. We do something more creative instead. We want to keep the rook on the board to cut off the king here. But we need to get rid of this fella here so we can defend the square behind it. We can get away with this by playing a sideways hookmate instead. So we play our sideways hookmate, knight's going fishing, catching the king's bait. This would be checkmate, so they have to take with the pawn. We've opened up the scope of our rook. You can't play a knight here because you block the scope of your bishop. So instead you're going to play this knight up, giving the check, keeping the bishop alive, keeping the rook alive. 609. I've gotten this one wrong before. I usually find a mate in 3 here, which is incorrect. I usually play bishop takes, check, king runs away, and then I use the fact that I've lured the king into a pin with the rook that I can get away with queen to c6 here. Problem is that when they run away, it's not checkmate there because this would be checkmate in 3. I failed the puzzle. So I kind of reverse engineer it and I play queen c6 first, check. If the rook takes, because it's not pinned, then we can play the bishop. We've opened up the scope of our rook to stop the king escaping ahead of time. And what else can they play? If they block with the bishop, we just take with the queen, and that's checkmate there. 610. We notice that the king is very weak on the light squares here, and we want to find a way to take advantage of this. We've got a nice open rook on the file. When we combine all this together, we can get away with playing queen to g4 here. If the king steps to the side, then we're just going to come in for checkmate here, nice and simple. However, he's probably going to take with the bishop. We've opened up the scope of our x-ray attacker here, so we can follow up with the bishop in this crisscross Bowden's mate. 611. You might be tempted by a move like this. Problem is that the king's going to escape. We're not going to get checkmate in 2 here. Ahead of time, we need to realize that we have sort of like an Anastasia's mate theme here with the knight restricting the king. We just need to force their king into this a little bit better. We can slide our rook over, sacrifice it for the greater good, king takes, and then we can come over and deliver our Anastasia's mate theme here. 612. Your intuition should be screaming at you. The king is so weak on these light squares. We've got a light square bishop and a queen. We have 2 ways for checkmate here. The way I found the fastest was bishop h5. They block with their pawn, and then we take it, and we get our baluster mate checkmate like this. The other way, you can come in with your queen. They have to block it, and then we checkmate like this. Just a simple queen and helper mate. Awesome job getting all the way to the end. Your chess will thank you. Majority of people can't even make it halfway through these puzzles and probably go back to watching cat videos or something. So thank you. Your chess will thank you. I'll see you in the next one.